Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King. And the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Today, I'm excited. I'm excited to have Dr. Joel Perez, an award-winning author, executive coach, belonging consultant, and Gallup Strengths coach, IDI qualified administrator, and founder of an amazing coaching and consulting practice. Look, you are like all of the titles, but one of the titles that I love the most is that you're the author of a book, Dear White Leader: How to Achieve Organizational Excellence Through Cultural Humanity. And that book was recognized, with humility. And that book was recognized with the Silver Award for Best New Voice Nonfiction by the Independent Book Publishers Association. Yeah. And as somebody that has written a lot of books and even had a publishing company at one point, I recognize the magnitude of that award alone. And I just want to say, man, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to be here on this stage virtually with you. And before we even get into all of the meat of what you have to offer our audience, I'd love to just start with wow, how do you balance all of these different things?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Thank you for the intro. I've been doing this now. This is year 6 of my coaching and consulting practice. Higher education was my background. Now working with small to mid-sized organizations, I want to create that sense of belonging that leads to meeting their organizational and professional goals. How do I balance? I'm into my early 50s. I've come to realize that it's not a work-life balance thing. It's a work-life integration. What I do as far as work-wise does integrate into my life and vice versa. And so it's been an amazing experience. I think I hold things loosely. My temperament is I'm pretty laid back, even keeled. I take it all in stride. And I know that one of the pieces of practicing or developing a posture of cultural humility is holding things loosely and being comfortable with ambiguity, because as much as we'd like to have all the answers to life, we don't and we won't.
Of course.
And I think I've come to acknowledge that. I work with clients about that. Even though we want the quick solution, the silver bullet, life is messy. Organizations are messy. People are messy. If you don't learn to live in the gray, you're going to have a whole lot of frustration in your life that will then bleed into your family, personal life, and such. And most likely not a very happy person.
Of course. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I believe that better people lead better teams and have better results. And, with our nonprofit leaders listening in, how do you practically implement this mindset of operating and executing in the gray?
Well, I think it's working with the leader themselves. It always starts with leadership and the individual, but it doesn't end there. I talk about that in my book, the Dear White Leader book, in that leadership is important work to do on yourself. But if you truly begin to embody it, it moves into the organization and then to your community. And by community, it's not just your residential community. It is your family, your faith your faith community, the volunteer organization that you volunteer at, whatever it may be. So getting clear, helping the leader get clear about who they are and how they show up, and helping them get to the point where they learn how to operate within their own skin. But again, not just inward focus, but outward focus. So getting to know the others around them.
That's good.
So that you can begin to share who you are. And I call it's called leading with clarity, being clear about who you are, and then being clear with others about who you are, and getting clearer with others about who they are, and then how you all show up in the organization together.
Yeah.
And nonprofits are mission driven generally. They are trying to fulfill a mission to serve their stakeholders,
Of course.
their key audience. And that requires, going back to what I said earlier, knowing that communities, particularly those in highly impacted or communities where there's high need, those communities and our communities are messy. And what works with one community doesn't work with another. And so that's what I talk about in that developing this posture of cultural humility, in that you may think you have an answer that works with one set of populations or one set of people. That doesn't mean it works for everybody. And working with leaders to understand that. And so that's how I approach the work. That's how I approach working with the leaders that I work with, the executive coaching that I do. And it helps them show up more authentically. It also means they got to be okay with looking in the mirror and realizing that they've lost some hair, or they, need a hearing aid, or, what have you, or they get wrinkles, and, in your neck, and, as you get older, your
I
body
get it.
changes.
I get it.
And it's learning to be comfortable with looking at yourself in the mirror as an individual, and helping your organization look in the mirror and seeing what needs to be addressed, so that ultimately you can create that culture of belonging for your organizations to meet to live out the mission that they've been called to live out.
I love that. And, I, former educator, similar to you, K-12 education, taught 8th grade ELA, and then did all of the roles in education. I feel like one of the challenges within education is when you start performing within the classroom, they pull you out of the classroom and they want to put you somewhere else rather than backfilling that position. But one of the things that I'd love to talk about is frameworks and bringing practicality to philosophy, because I feel like in frameworks, it provides a bullet point list of what people can do moving forward.
Yes.
So when you think about cultural humility, when you think about leadership, when you think about the philosophies that you share, not only in your books, but in your talks, et cetera, and your coaching, what is a framework that you would lean towards to be able to have our listeners embody on a day-to-day basis, so that they can be able to create spaces that are much better than the environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm sharing a new, well, I don't know if it's new, but I've been using it for a little while now. I call it the belonging centered organizational framework. And it's comprised of 4 dimensions. Psychological safety. You need to have an organization where people feel like they can make mistakes, speak up, used for learning and healthy conflict, right? Systems that work for everyone. So being clear about your systems, whether it's the way you pay equity, the way you treat people, that you build the system with diverse experience in mind, so that you can address the inequities when you see them showing up in your organization. Then it's and they all work together. So this is not hierarchical, it is dimensions. The third one, or one of the ones, is accountable leadership. Learning to show up, again, going back to what I said earlier, authentically, which means being accountable to yourself, but being accountable to others. However you want to integrate that, whether it's to your board, whether it's to your the people you lead, the people you hire to come alongside you, right? And because leaders need to take responsibility for their impact, so that the accountability is clear to all your stakeholders.
Exactly.
Right. And the last one is daily habits that build belonging. How do you interact with people on a daily basis? All this ultimately leads to, I believe, a belonging-centered organization.
That's good.
And you can take those same dimensions, and I do call it, and I call it becoming a belonging-centered leader.
Mm.
It may look differently, but you still need to lead, be accountable, right? Accountable leadership, lead with psychological safety, habits that build belonging, and approach systems with that approach of systems that work for everyone. And so those are the two frameworks. The leadership framework that actually the second book is about, that is still in process, is what I call being an exceptional leader.
Yeah.
And there are 12 traits, and these are traits. Some of them you'll see I think Forbes did an article back in the mid 90s, early 2000s on what exceptional leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
The three things that I specifically talk about that aren't on other lists is one, culture humility. Second, leaning into your strengths and leaning into your identity and using them as your superpower.
That's good.
Okay. So however you show up, whatever those identities are selling for you. And the third is mental health. We need leaders who value their own mental health and the mental health of others. And in our day and age, mental health is really important, right? Because of all that's happening, all within the context of the turbulence or the instability that exists in the world. The geopolitics stuff is not going to go away. The political polarization is not going to go away. You need leaders who can navigate through the complexity and the turbulence that they're experiencing so that they can lead exceptionally.
Agreed.
And as I've been sharing this in the workshops that I've been doing and with others, this exceptional leadership framework, it's really resonating with people because it's framed within the context of our context in the world. And as much as we'd like things to go back the way they are, they're not going to. As much as we don't like to do that. And I think the Prime Minister of Canada said it best, and nostalgia is not a strategy. So we cannot, not that isn't important. It should be valued and reflected on. But just like when you're riding a mountain bike down a mountain, you can't look back, because if you look back, you're not going to see what's in front of you, and you're going to hit a rock and tumble and fall and break whatever. Right?
Exactly.
And those are two metaphors. So the other metaphor I use is turbulence on an airline, right? The first time I tell a story about my first time on an airplane, how scary it was when I started experiencing turbulence.
Yeah.
Even though I, listened to the flight attendant wholeheartedly, and I knew where the emergency exits were. And as I was experiencing the turbulence on the plane, I was gripping, the handles of my seat. Yeah. I could feel my stomach coming through my throat. But eventually it flattened out, right? The pilot knew what they were doing, and they flattened out. They found some smooth air. Now when I'm on an airplane, and not that I don't experience bad turbulence anymore, I do, but I know that things ultimately are going to be okay. Because I've learned to normalize the turbulence that I've experienced so that I can get on a plane comfortably and still know that it's scary, but I now have the skill set or the memory to help me navigate the future in a way that's going to help, in this case, the people I serve, or in your case, the organization you serve. And that is, again, leading through the turbulence exceptionally.
I love metaphors. I use them all the time, and I love hearing really great ones. So I will definitely be stealing both of those in some type of talk in the future. So I appreciate those. And, one of the things that I recognize in our professional careers, there's a lot of turbulence that we experience.
Yes.
In your career, there's been decades, I'm sure, of turbulence, because you've been doing this work for over 2 decades. You've been transforming in this intersection of leadership, culture, and organizational transformation, of what I like to call it.
Yep.
But what turbulence really stuck out to me the most in just kind of learning about your background and your story is that you were a first-generation college student and the son of a Mexican immigrant.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how that turbulence shape the way that you lead, the way that you coach, the way that you transform people today?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. So I'm a son of immigrants who immigrated from Mexico in the late 50s. My mom and dad met in Los Angeles, fell in love, had 3 kids, 3 boys. I'm the youngest of 3.
Wow.
I grew up in a predominantly, well, initially white dominant neighborhood that moved into becoming Latino dominant, mostly Mexican American. And Spanish was my first language. I actually don't ever remember learning English. I just did. It'd been interesting kind of reflecting on that. My brothers, I think, went through a little bit more of a challenge. So I learned from them, and then the church we were going to had a lot of us that were English speakers. So I picked up the language, and the way and then, elementary school, middle school, high school, and then off to college, boom, predominantly white institution. Right. And so the way my immigrant story that I share, I'm also on the board now of an immigration resource center in Southern California. Wow. And we do, in the midst of everything, we're doing a lot of good work.
Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
But for me, the way it's shaped my worldview and how I think of people, one, as immigrants, and or helping leaders reflect on when they move into a new position, when they are leading people across difference. I share my own story of how challenging that can be for someone who's a first generation college graduate, who was sitting in boardrooms in my first C-suite role and not exactly knowing what the heck the conversation was going on around hedge funds.
Exactly.
That was not table conversation, nor getting a doctorate. My parents never talked about me getting a doctorate. My kids know what a PhD is, right? And so it shapes the way I approach people with a curiosity. So, I'm wearing a shirt that says, "Be curious, not judgmental," which is a quote from Ted Lasso, the show Ted Lasso. And it's really important for me because my story was I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have the language, but I was learning to be curious and have this posture because I have the gifting strengths. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I talk about this, of being a bridge builder, of bringing communities that are polar opposite to have conversation. And that can be challenging for some. I do the work that I do. One of my signature coaching programs, as I call it, cultural humility coaching, where I work with white leaders who are trying to navigate leading across difference. And I have colleagues who, like, Joel, I'm so glad you're doing that work. Colleagues of color, who would say, who's tell me, Joel, I'm really glad you're doing that work because I have no patience to work with people. And I said, you know what? I don't mind standing in that space because I can help leaders who are part of the dominant cultural group learn more about themselves and how they show up so they can lead across difference. And that's important work for me, all because of my experience as a first generation college student who went to a faith community, mostly comprised of immigrants, learning to navigate the world in the 80s and 90s. And that has shaped the way I approach, the way I coach. the way I advise, the way I mentor, this belonging centered framework, the idea of writing a book on cultural humility.
Mhm.
That's all related back to my own sort of, I guess, origin story, right? If you use the
Exactly.
superhero language of the origin
Exactly.
story. And I see my identities as superpowers, and I don't see them. I've had to navigate sort of learning how to see them that way, as opposed to
Yeah.
deficits or things that I need to overcome.
Hmm.
And when I work with leaders of color, or leaders from non-dominant groups or minoritized communities, is helping them, because sometimes we need help with remembering that these identities we have and hold are actually sources of strength.
Hmm.
And it's okay to lean into them, even though the world has told us we have to hide them, or the imposter syndrome, the code switching, which sometimes you have to learn how to do well, but you have to learn, you have to own who you are
Of
and
course.
how you show up. But it's, again, going back to what I said earlier, leading with clarity, so that people know the way you lead and why you lead the way you lead, and why you make the decisions you make, and all those things, so that your teams, your employees, your stakeholders don't end up filling in the gaps with their own stories about you.
Of course. I really appreciate that philosophy and just that perspective. It reminds me of many of the leaders that I've worked with on kind of both sides of the aisle, and how much I've gained and how much I've learned from them just by being curious and by creating a space of belonging. And one of the perspectives that you share in your writing, but then also in your speaking, and it's even come up today, is this idea around belonging centered leadership. What does it mean, though, for someone listening in and this is their first time being exposed to something of that nature? What does it mean to be a belonging centered leader?
Yeah, well, one, it's realizing that you want to be a belonging centered leader, right? And you want to create, you want people to feel good about your leadership.
Yeah.
And that means affirming your identities, affirming their identities, creating space for conversation. It starts really, I believe, with the accountable leadership piece. Is learning how to be accountable to yourself and others, recognizing that the way you show up, those daily habits, is going to lead to creating that organizational culture or team, or your unit, your area, so that people feel like they can thrive.
Of course.
And what it means is starts with self-awareness. So who are you? How do you lead? How do people receive your leadership? How do you communicate your leadership? That ultimately leads to the psychological safety, the systems that work for everyone, and the daily habits that build belonging.
That's good.
And so those are things that if someone were to walk in and say, Joel, what does that look like? That's how I describe it. I have a YouTube channel that people can go to, and I have a couple of intro videos of what a belonging-centered organization is and what a belonging-centered leader is. And then I break those out a little bit more with some more in-depth videos about those two particular aspects. I think for a belonging-centered leader, I think one of the key cornerstones is learning the difference between intent versus impact. And because we always have good intentions. I mean, I in my book, Dear White Leader, even though it's the target audience is white leaders who want to get better at leading across difference.
Yeah.
I write it as a leadership book. So the stories I share in the book are actually my own stories, and some about my clients and the organizations I work with. But I still make mistakes.
Exactly.
Right. I still have bias that shows up. Now I've learned how to mitigate the impact of that bias, and that's how I help clients. But it's important for that leader who wants to be a belonging-centered leader to get clear about intent versus impact. And in the book, I talk about when you make a mistake, you apologize, but you shouldn't expect that other person to necessarily accept your apology or for them to respond. And it's not about what a lot of us do, early on, I was doing this too, is I made it about myself, meaning, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I think you misunderstood me. That's not what I meant. Or worst case scenario, sometimes I've been around leaders who say, you just got to suck it up. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think that landed with the person you just said to that?
I can't stand that response.
Yeah, they probably don't want to work for you, right?
Yeah.
The ROI, if you want to use a business term, is that if you create this if you're a belonging centered leader that creates a belonging centered organization, people are going to want to work for you. And we know Harvard's done there's been a lot of studies that that's more cost effective to retain your talent than have to go out and hire someone. Exactly. But I believe also, I think the human in me wants people to thrive and for people to be their best selves. And there's a moral code to it. I mean, there's a sense of morality to it. But I know that now we're in a stage where you have to make the business case. And the business case, I believe, is there to make.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it goes back to who am I and what do I want to be known for and how do I want people to remember me when I leave this place, right? And I think there's a lot of people that want to be remembered in a positive way and not a negative way.
That's so good.
And so, yeah,
that is so good. And I think I try to consider the leader that's listening in every single time that we have an episode. So for the executive director, for the CEO, whether it's the school leader, for the social impact leader that is listening in right now, that wants to build a healthier culture, where should they begin?
Well, I always like looking in the mirror, meaning taking stock of what, and if it's an organization, taking stock of where your organization is.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a lot of our organizations collect data already. I'm not necessarily pitching a new survey, but if you take some kind of survey of the people that work in your organization and you learn and you really dissect it, you're going to see a story. Right. You're going to see a story, hopefully one you like, but generally sometimes it's not a story you like. And you're like, oh my gosh, that, women feel this way in my organization versus men, or people of color feel this way versus people of the dominant, white culture.
Yep.
So where I think you need to start is asking yourself, I guess going back to asking yourself, can I be honest with myself? Do I want to be honest with myself? And if you answer yes to those, then you look at the story of people who are leaving your organization, the stories of the people that are staying in your organization. I love data. I mean, I have a PhD, and I did a qualitative research study. So I did interviews, but I looked at numerical data as well.
Yeah.
And that's important. So you need to do the research and be an investigator so you can really learn about the organization you serve or how you show up and how you're being received. And I will acknowledge, Kyle, that self-awareness is a scary thing.
It is.
And it's not always fun to ask people what they think of you or look at data about who you are and how you show up. Because it's going to may show you something that you're not excited to know.
That's good.
So if that's, and I worked with clients like that, like, okay, we got to get comfortable. You have to learn how to get comfortable with this, and you're going to make mistakes. It's what you do with those mistakes that are going to make you a better leader. Right. And so when we were 20 years old and we got negative performance reviews, we probably got really upset about it. But now if you look back on those performance reviews, when you're 40, 50, 60, you may go, oh, that was actually good feedback for me to know. But what did you do with that feedback when you were 20? Well, you probably ended up being very upset and complaining about your manager or the leader or what have you. And it's learning to get comfortable with the good and the bad to help you figure out a way forward so that you can leave that legacy that you want to leave in your current organization and to prepare for the next organization, whatever that may be.
You are such a knowledge bank. I love it so much. These are such practical tools and opportunities for leaders and just individuals listening in to reflect. And if you're listening in, man, I hope you're taking notes, pausing the episode, and really being able to identify how we can begin to start implementing this in our day-to-day practices. Joel, I'd love to ask just one final question. For the leaders listening in right now, that you mentioned something earlier that want to move from intent to impact. What is one thing they can take away from this conversation so that they can begin to do that?
Well, one, understand the difference between intent versus impact, right? So that's the one piece. I think for leaders to really be self-evaluative or self-reflective is creating space, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to really think about themselves as a leader and what it is that they want to be known for. And how known for by their organization, by the people they lead, by the communities they serve. And once you have your why, I mean, lots of work about being done or things written about figuring out your why, then working backwards or reverse engineering it, if you want to use that term, to get you to where you need to go. And that's going to help move you along. But you gotta ask yourself, am I willing to be honest with myself? Am I willing to allow others to be honest with me?
Yeah. That's such a powerful question to ask. And I needed to write that one down. Like, what do you really want to be known for? And I love the mention earlier when you just asking your potential team, like, hey, what do you think about me? And being willing to sit in the uncomfortable, being willing to sit in the things that you don't even recognize, because this isn't an opportunity to stroke your ego. This is an opportunity for you to reflect and open you up so that you can identify how to get better. Joel, this has been phenomenal. Where can people find you, and how can people work with you to be able to transform from intent to impact?
Yeah, well, I would say the clear call to action is because, those of you who do marketing and business development know you got to have a good, clear CTA, right? I would say visit my book website, dearwhiteleader.com. And you're going to learn more about the book, the content of the book. There's a culture humility assessment. That'll get you started. And that'll also give you a chance to learn more about me. And if you're ready to move from that, I'm active on LinkedIn. I have, another website, the boyocoaching.com website. But that'll get you started. And I think what I've really enjoyed is I have a community, I have an email list of people that I send out to. I do 2 emails a month, one with links to resources on leadership, leading, coaching, becoming a more inclusive leader. And people love the resource. And then I do another one in the month where I share a thought piece of the work things that I'm thinking of, an excerpt from the book with some thoughts, or I highlight another coach or consultant or speaker about the work they're doing that I know would resonate with my community. So the clear call to action is dearwhiteleader.com.
I love it. Go to that website right now. We're going to put it in our show notes once this goes live. Joel, this has been amazing. And I appreciate you so much, my friend. For our listeners listening, if you were intrigued, as I was intrigued from this episode, I want you to like it. I want you to share it with someone in your world. And I want you to write a review and then send that review to Joel. I want you to be able to go to that website, go get his book today. And remember, the energy you bring is the culture you create. It's another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. Go make your culture worth creating. We'll see you guys next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.